Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August 28th, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. Now, recently, and by recently I mean about 3 days ago now, there was a shooting in Jacksonville by a guy who shot up an esports football gaming convention or contest. The guy's name was David Katz. And I think he's currently dead at this point. Let me check. As normal, of course, the right-wing media talked about how we shouldn't care about this while caring about it immensely. I'd like to also remind you that this was considered not even a shooting, when meanwhile, let's be real here, if the guy was black, it'd be considered a crime. If he had more than 3 syllables in his name, he'd be a terrorist. But, what I'm saying is, let's just make fun of Paul Joseph Watson again. So why does Watson think this is caused? His first reason is, of course, society, because, crazy people just never do crazy things. It's always society's fault, but if you dare say that about a Muslim, you're a terrorist sympathizer. Do I need to point out anything? You see, it's all the fault of neoliberalism, whatever that even means at this point, and consumerism, which makes people shoot up things. I think he's kind of jumping to conclude. I don't even think he's wrong in criticizing this. I just think he's jumping to conclusions a little. Also, I've pointed it out before, but I swear to God, Paul is slowly becoming a communist. It's actually pretty funny. It's also the vague concept of society's fault because we celebrate mass shootings by reporting on them. Which, makes a lot of sense, just like how by having Holocaust museums, we celebrate Nazism. Or by having, say, monuments to Confederate generals, we celebrate the Confederacy and should get rid of the... Wait, now, if you advocate for that, you're a terrorist, and basically 1984, blah, blah, blah. This is also the fault of liberals, because they said that white people have done bad things in the past, Despite the fact Katz never really seemed to have an issue with that. I mean, as Paul points out, his Reddit posts were genuinely liberal. But, guess that doesn't matter. This is also apparently the fault of social isolation, which Paul has no proof even exists, or is, for that matter, any worse post-internet age than it was pre-internet age. But his proof for this, I am not making this up, is that the shootings take place in populated areas. I assumed that was because you're much more likely to kill a lot of people if you try to kill people in a populated area. But I guess I'm just a little crazy like that. This may have also been the fault of SSRIs, which apparently make you a psychopath, and Paul's proof of that, for the record, is the fact that mass shooters are on it, ignoring the fact that there are also tons of people who aren't mass shooters who are on it. But, you gotta complain that medicine exists. But, you know what? Okay, that was kind of serious. Let's just talk about Matt Walsh again. He's pretty fun. Here's an article from him he posted on Daily Wire today. The worst bullies in America. Wasn't it the title of a Shapiro book? Now, I'd like to remind you that Matt Walsh has spent the last week going on an absolute crusade against the Catholic Church due to them having a whole bunch of pedophiles, which, according to him, by the way, is actually the fault of homosexuals, because it's been long established that Matt Walsh is kind of crazy. However, I will give him credit. He is actively fighting pedophilia, which is always a good. Yet, after hearing that, you'd think he'd have an issue with the Catholic Church running centers primarily made for children. But he's Matt Walsh, so if there's one thing he hates more than pedophilia, it's the gays. LGBT activists have succeeded in shutting down another adoption agency. This time, Catholic Charities of Buffalo was compelled to discontinue its adoption services because Catholic Charities committed the crime of being Catholic. Didn't you just spend the last week talking about all the sex abuse and homosexuality going on in there? Actually, I don't think I've ever seen someone successfully debunk what they just spent 2% of a year doing. Because if Matt Walsh was right, and it was all actually the gays and not the pedophiles, don't you think the gays would actively be loving the Catholic Church right now? The organization would not send children into a household with same-sex parents. For that, it was forced to shutter. LGBT activists have closed adoption agencies across the country and the world on the same basis. It is almost irrelevant to note the organization's original adoption policy was not only morally correct, but also in keeping with reason and science. All the studies actually suggest otherwise. Studies consistently show that children fare better in traditional mother-father families, and children in same-sex parent household have higher rates of depression, suicide, and abuse. I actually checked both his links. One is from Washington Times and the other is from Daily Wire. Although he writes for the Daily Wire, so, you know. Also, I checked, the Daily Wire study only used about 20 people. Great statistics there. These facts should be no surprise to people who've developed a basic understanding of biology. Every child in history has had a mother and a father. Yes, this is how basic biology works. This would seem to be a very strong indicator that every child is supposed to have a mother and a father. No one's making it so they don't, but okay. Also, I thought rights only existed in a negative context, but okay. I guess we're throwing that out the window. But, as I said, the righteousness of the Catholic Church's policies is besides the point. The real point is that they have the constitutional right to operate according to the teachings of the Church, whose name is plastered in huge bold letters across the front of the building. On the other hand, no one has a right to adopt children. Children are not commodities you are entitled to possess. Well, wait a minute. Actually, we determine you don't have the constitutional right to discriminate, and if you're going to ignore that, you're going back around a good 100 years. But okay. And for that matter, no one's saying that if you're, say, an active pedophile, which, on a side note, Matt, the last week of articles proves the people you're siding with are. Just saying. You're supposed to be able to adopt children. No one is saying that. We're just saying if they show the signs of being a stable relationship or household, then they should be able to adopt children. That's all anyone has ever said. Yet that is exactly how LGBT activists view the situation. To them, a child is just another flag to capture, another political victory to achieve. And if scores of children must now suffer for the sake of the greater good of the LGBT lobby, so what you're saying is get money out of politics, so be it. Of course, this is only another in a long, long line examples of the gay left scorching the earth and wrecking lives in an effort to impose its ideology on everyone. Jack Phillips, oh god, him again, won a victory against them in the Supreme Court, but they have not relented. They are still trying to destroy his livelihood and will continue the assault for another 5 or 10 or 20 until they get their way. Yeah, we're boycotting him. I thought that's what you wanted us to do in the first place. What do you think would happen when they found another baker? Think they'd still give money to him? Any Christian business owner who refuses to bow before the LGBT altar is liable to the same onslaught. If he has not faced it yet, that's only because they haven't noticed him yet. Speaking of bowing, before bowing, took me a minute, before the altar, just this week, Brown University pulled down a study proving that teenagers become trans to imitate their peers. This study was debunked within 12 hours. The LGBT mob reacted with outrage at this carefully researched that's just a lie study and demanded that the truth it contains be suppressed. Actually, we allowed the truth to speak. There were tons of places that put it up there. And then it was debunked pathetically easily because it was a stupid study that didn't actually say anything. They simply will not allow discussion of the social or biological facts related to the trans phenomenon of 3 in every 1,000 people. Oh my God, Matt, this is destroying the world. They will tolerate only a complete and unthinking acceptance of their dogmas. Aren't you a Christian? I could cite 1,000 other examples, but there is no need. The point is plain enough. I read the whole thing so far, for the record. I've not left anything out. LGBT activists are the worst bullies in America, by far, and it's not even close. Believing that their goals is manifestly good, who does something they believe is bad? And it's not... They will resort to any means, whatever, to accomplish it, ruining lives, tearing down businesses, leaving children without families. No, none of that is true. These are small prices to pay. They hardly qualify as prices at all. The LGBT mob quite enjoys devouring those who oppose it. Have you tried coming up with new arguments? They hurt and heartache it leaves its wake is more perk than a price. And what is the good goal? Anyway, they will say they seek equality, but that cannot be what they seek because they already have it. Homosexuals have all the same rights as heterosexuals. Okay, true. The one and only inequality left is the rule prohibiting active homosexuals from donating blood due to astronomically higher rates of HIV in the gay community. And yeah, and then we determined that didn't make any sense, and there were a million other factors, and that doesn't. And for that matter, we can determine whether or not there's HIV in blood. For the record, if this was before we could determine whether or not someone has HIV several days ahead of time, like I think at this point we're at around a month and a half ahead of time, then okay, I understand. I think it's a little silly, but I understand. We can find if someone has HIV now pretty easily. But even this is under attack and being repealed. The LGBT lobby will risk giving HIV to hospital patients if it means they get to win another battle. Who actively donates blood just to spread HIV? Like, I'm curious, has anyone actually ever heard of that story? Comment below if you can find it. I actually kind of want to see that now. Don't do that, for the record. So if equality is not the aim, what is? Tolerance, homosexuality is not only tolerated, but literally celebrated by almost all of our cultural institutions. Citation needed. They have more than tolerance, they have, in many quarters, something closer to worship. I don't think that's even close to true, but okay. What is the point then? It seems there isn't any single pronounceable point. They have the same motivations as any other sort of bully. Vengeance, spite, imposing their will, expressing their hatred, etc. That's all the gay rights fight in America means anymore. Good God, man, you've gone insane recently. Well, you've already been insane for a while. But anyway, that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.